Can you guys see and hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we
okay,
can.
great. I wasn't seeing myself, so okay, I'm seeing, okay. All right, so good evening, everyone. I hope that everyone is good. How is everyone doing? I know for me over here in the East, I'm very hot. It's very hot. Um, how is everyone doing? Can just drop it in the chat or open your mic and speak.
I'll open my mic because I feel your pain. I'm boiling in the sun and I'm tired.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling the crunch. Anyone else? I see Denny's put it in the chat, same. It's a very bold same. All right, so I just like to formally welcome each and everyone to our mental health forum. I know that, as was mentioned earlier, it's really saturated, which is actually a good thing to see that, many persons are taking up the mantle of, putting importance in on mental health issues. So I really am appreciative of that fact. And we're just here. We know that we're university students. Most of us are university students, and many times we're going through things and we don't even know where to go or who to speak to. Well, this if you're here, that means that you're one step closer to having all those questions answered. So before we start, we having the floor, Ramona said. So we will have two speakers this evening. First is Dr. Debian Chambers. The second is Dr. Tamika Coley. So Dr. Debian Chambers is a licensed psychologist and certified poetry therapy practitioner. She's the current head of the University Counseling Unit at UWI-Mona. Dr. Chambers is passionate about mental health promotion and advocacy, as she believes that a community approach to mental health care is the most effective approach. When not in individual or group sessions, she can be found raising awareness on Instagram and various other media platforms, including a recent interview on TVJ with Public Health Media. So, Dr. Chambers, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. All right. So yes, everybody's been hearing a lot about mental health since yesterday, since Sunday, which is celebrated as World Mental Health Day, under the same theme, mental health in an unequal world. So also, Najani, let me know how much time I have so that I'm not encroaching on anybody else's time. If you find that there are certain things that are repeated between presenters, that's good, because repetition is the mother of learning. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
I will brief you and remind you privately as we go along.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm looking at the chat too. Feel free to throw in any questions or private questions for those who are here on Zoom. I do have the YouTube. Some people may be watching much later, but for the few people that are on, if you want to ask questions in the chat, please feel free to do so. This is your opportunity to ask psychologists questions maybe you've always wanted to ask. And so I'll try my best to answer it. Okay, I'm gonna share a PowerPoint just to have some, some general tips and ideas. I actually won't share everything on it, but some things I definitely want to share with you. Okay, so I hope that you're all seeing this. You can give me a thumbs up to let me know, and hopefully you're seeing it too on YouTube. So I actually absolutely, totally, completely love the theme for this year's Mental Health Day and Mental Health Week. Because this is one of my passions, looking at inequities and how they affect mental health, not only on an individual basis, but also on a collective basis. And I hope to talk about some of that. So I was going to show a video, and I may show that at the end, but just to not interrupt, I'm going to skip over this for now, but it's a mental health campaign. That's pretty interesting and well done. And many of you, whether you're watching now or later, may be able to identify with some of the things said. It's a short 3-minute clip, and I hope to share it a little later. But generally, it's under the theme, it's okay not to be okay. I'll talk about that a little later too. So what is mental health? We're hearing that word thrown around a lot. Sometimes as psychologists, when I listen to people talk about mental health, they seem to be talking about mental illness, and they're using the word interchangeably. So it's important for us to just look at a definition, right? So for mental health, you can be, I guess if you look at dichotomies, mentally healthy or not healthy or mentally ill. However, I think we vacillate between those points depending on what's going on in our lives. And for some people, they do have a diagnosable mental illness. And so we'll get into more of that. But this is a definition by the World Health Organization. I like that definition. I'm going to ask you to pay attention to any words or phrases that jump out at you. And I will tell you the words and phrases that jump out at me. So according to the World Health Organization, mental health is an integral and essential component of health. So it's a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or their own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and they're able to make a contribution to their community. Okay, so the first thing that I want to point to you, if things are shimmering to you, if things jumping out to you, put it in the chat or put it on YouTube. But the first thing that jumped out at me is the idea that mental health is an integral component of health. And so we have slogans like there's no health without mental health. So when we're thinking of that, we're thinking of health in the way that we think and how we feel and our behaviors. And it is definitely essential. So to neglect your mental health is to neglect your overall health. You're able to realize your abilities and potentials, if you want to call it, when you're mentally healthy. And I know that that is something very important, especially to university students. You want to know that you're realizing your potential and realizing your own abilities. And so to do so, you have to be mentally healthy. This phrase, I think, is very interesting, especially now during the pandemic, can cope with the normal stresses of life. I am not sure what is normal anymore, to tell you the truth. I don't think that the stress we're going through is particularly normal. However, we're coping the best way that we can work productively. And my favorite part is to make a contribution to our community. So mental health is not an individual thing. It's also a collective thing. We want to be mentally healthy. That means our well-being in terms of how we think and how we feel and how we behave, because we want to be able to contribute to what I call the common good, right? And have that vice versa. I see somebody put in the chat, we're finding our footing, very much so. And I think one of the things about COVID is that sometimes as soon as we find our footing, our foot kick out from under us again, and we have something else to deal with. So it can really feel like we're always slipping, but we're really trying the best that we can, and that's most important to recognize. So if you think of the definition, mental health is really broad. It affects all aspects of our lives. What it is not, by the way, is to be happy all the time or to be okay all the time. And that really is important for me to say, because I think sometimes in psychology, we can unintentionally perpetuate a stereotype that you're in therapy, so you're working towards being your ideal self, which means that you're totally self-actualized and everything is wonderful, but life doesn't really work like that. And so a part of it is accepting who we are and where we're at, and that there are times when we're going to have difficult days. Having a difficult day, feeling sadness is not an indication that you're mentally unhealthy, right? Or that you have a mental illness. When it interferes with our ability to work productively, to contribute to our society and to cope, then we're veering into mental illness, which again shouldn't be stigmatized. And I think you'll go into that later. So I'm looking at the chat and I'm noticing some points being raised, that mental health refers to emotional, behavioral, and cognitive well-being. You're totally on point there. And cognitive just means how we think, right? It describes how behavior, feelings, and thoughts are expressed, very much so. Somebody in chat said coping with normal stresses of life stand out to me. Yeah, that stood out to me too. And again, it's a reference that life will have stress, right? So feeling stressed is not something that we ought to judge ourselves about or to feel embarrassed or ashamed about. And I'm really going to highlight that for our students at UE, because I think sometimes we have an idea of, oh, but I'm a student of UE, or I'm a grad student, or I'm this, I'm a member of leadership, so I'm not supposed to be stressed. I'm supposed to be able to handle everything. But that actually is not true. It's normal, yes, as somebody put in the chat. All right, so hold that definition in mind, and also the additions that were mentioned while I read the chat. Those are wonderful. All right, so but what about the unequal world part, which again, that's what I say I'm really interested in. The reality is that unfortunately, we do not live in an equal world. And so we experience all sorts of discrimination and systemic violence, and I'll say what that is, based sometimes on our social class, where we live, or gender, or sexual orientation, or religious beliefs, different things like that, really, unfortunately, in our society can bring about a lot of discrimination and inequality. And the reality is that it hurts us. One particular issue that I want to highlight is perhaps a social class one. I'll highlight a few others, but a social class one, especially when we're dealing with mental health. Sometimes I'll see on TV or I'll hear on the radio, you know, everybody should go to counseling. And of course, that's what I do. So I believe that, right? Counseling can be a supportive space. You don't have to be struggling with a mental illness per se to go to counseling. But we ignore the fact that in private practice can run up to $10,000 to $15,000 a session. And we can understand that it is that high because psychologists have to pay overheads, they have to live, it's their livelihood. And so that's understandable. However, it is out of the reach of many Jamaicans, unfortunately, because insurance, many insurance policies don't cover counseling or therapy. They may cover psychiatry, which is really important, and only up to a certain part, but they don't cover counseling. Here at UE, we are fortunate that we have an insurance policy that does that, so students and staff don't pay anything out of pocket. But we don't mention that when we say to people, oh, seek mental health treatment. In a lower middle income country, or well, Jamaica's middle income at this point, we also have to look at, there's not a lot of spending on mental health. So I think PAHO, that's a Pan American Health Organization, has put out that in our region, it's about 2% of the health budget that goes towards mental health. And by the way, that's not that far different from what you consider first world nations also. So the reality is that governments across the board don't tend to spend a lot on mental health, because we're talking about 2% of the health budget. All right, somebody in the chat says it's a luxury for many people. Unfortunately, yes. So that's another issue. right? And then when we come to spending on mental health, what I'm seeing is that we will spend sometimes on response, but we don't spend on prevention. And that's an issue for me. And that touches on equality. We know in public health and in psychology that there are a lot of what we call social determinants of mental health. Now, what that means, Dr. Debbie, I bring out all these big words, right? It means what you already don't know. If you're at UE and you're struggling to pay your tuition and you don't know what's going to happen, if you're going to drop out because your parents, your auntie, whoever can't afford to send you here, it's likely that you will experience anxiety and depression, right? If you don't know what's going to happen when you go home, you hear that somebody was killed on the road and there might be reprisal killings, and or you don't know how you're going to stay up and study, likely you will have PTSD, anxiety, other things like that. So prevention is also working towards a society in which we have less violence, in which education is attainable for many, for all who want it, I should say, where there is less gender-based violence also and less discrimination. Working for all those things is also working for mental health. All right, somebody else in the chat says, I think the effects of this pandemic. Yeah. And so the pandemic is also unequally affecting people, I believe. We're all over the world. We know that there are some companies that are just making billions of dollars while other people are struggling to find work or to keep work. And so we have to admit that that is going to affect our mental health. Even if you have, let me look at time, okay, even if you have a hereditary tendency, let's say, towards a mental illness like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, etc. The stresses, if you're under a great amount of stress, that is also not going to be good for you, and it might increase your chances that you have an episode. So these are things that we have to keep in mind when we talk about mental health. When we talk about access to mental health care, it's really a broad thing. And I would personally, when I can say, so Dr. Debbie says, so what is okay, I'm on YouTube, so if the evidence is here, I would personally love to see the students at UE do more advocacy on campus for increased mental health services. You are far more powerful than you realize. Which comes to the other point about inequality. The fact is that we do have a shortage of mental health clinicians in this region. There are parts of Latin America or the Caribbean that might have one psychiatrist to how many thousand people. In Jamaica, we're more fortunate. We're probably, I heard on a UNICEF presentation that we are more fortunate than many in this region. And so that is wonderful and that's great. I'm seeing more mental health services pop up, but yet it's not enough to meet the demand. So we have to think of how as a nation we're going to address what confronts us. But I'll get off my soapbox now. As I say, I'm very passionate about this issue. But let's go on, because I think many of you want to talk about, well, okay, Dr. Debbie, what do I do? You don't tell me if I don't have a lot of money, a joke, so what do I do? Are you saying there's nothing for me? No, that's not what I'm saying. So I'm going to talk about some resources where you can take care of your mental health. Before I do that, I want to point out, however, that taking care of your mental health is a daily commitment to your well-being. And this is just something that came to me the other day. I know, right? I've been a psychologist for how many years? And this just came to me the other day. I think I was working out and I thought to myself, wait a minute now. Taking care of our mental health, just like how sometimes I get up in the morning and I exercise, and honestly, I don't always feel like it. Sometimes I have to find the right music. That's how I should be approaching my mental health. Like, it's something that I do every day in terms of taking care of my mental health, I should say. So I thought I could ask myself the question, what did you do today to take care of your mental health? Right? And it doesn't have to be this huge thing. It might be something simple as, I love to drink tea, and I made myself a nice cup of tea and sat in silence. I got up and I exercised today. I went to the gym. I walked today. I listened to some music today. I scrolled through YouTube and found the latest Chronic song and just danced in my room for it. I laughed with a friend. Somebody put in the chat, I got out of my office and got some fresh air. Yes, that's a big thing. Sometimes if you come to the health center, you might see me just walking around the quadrangle we have. Sometimes just, oh, you need to get up out of your office and just walk, which I love to do. So it might be a small thing. It might be, you know what, I did something nice for somebody today because I wanted to show love. Or here is something else. I opened up myself to receive kindness and love from someone today, because the truth is many of us struggle with that. So taking care of your mental health is a daily commitment, right? So all the things that we said, your emotional state, your cognitive state, your behavior, all of that. No, something that you can do for your mental health is to go to counseling or therapy. And I know that later, I think you'll talk about what are some of the signs that you may need to seek a professional. So I won't go into that, but I just want to do a little education a bit about what counseling is and what counseling is not. First of all, I don't think you have to be mentally ill to go to counseling, but it's good if you have a mental illness, depression, anxiety. Know that depression and anxiety can come with adjustment, adjusting to university, adjusting to the pandemic. If you have had a psychotic episode, and so maybe you're diagnosed with schizophrenia, we have several students who are and who do very well. Bipolar disorder, if you're struggling with a substance use disorder, if you're finding that your relationships are topsy-turvy and you might be struggling with what we call a personality disorder, which I tend to prefer to think of as like a wound, right? That you're struggling with. It is good to go into counseling. But what is counseling? It's a professional relationship. So that's one. It's focused on your needs. The list is there. I won't read all of them. It is a non-judgmental space. Many people come in to see me and they're just like, there's no way. There's no way you're not going to judge me for this. No, honestly, I've heard many things. And I'm usually listening out of curiosity rather than judgment. And if I should ever find myself judging, my question to myself may be more, what's going on with you, Debbie, that this is happening for you, which may mean I need to take a break. Right? So it is a non-judgmental space. But guess what? It is for a limited time. So counseling is not forever. Definitely at UE, the counseling sessions don't go beyond graduation. So it's a relationship that you're going to enter into for a limited time to focus on a particular mental health need. It's not a quick fix. And I'm going to say that I know several, a few of you might wish that it is. Sometimes I wish that it was, like I could quickly fix somebody's pain, but the reality is it's not. And sometimes people come into me and they say, well, Dr. Debbie, can't you just write me a prescription? Do I have to really talk about my vulnerabilities? So it's not a quick fix. And that's something that you have to kind of remind yourself of. Guess what? It's not about solving your problems. At this point, you're probably on the floor. What do I mean? It's not about solving our problems. Why would I come? But sometimes we realize that there are some things that we're not going to have a solution to, but we're going to learn to have a different relationship with, right? So you may have that friend, neighbor, parent who you can't fix them. Being in a relation with them will be difficult. So it's how to have a different type of relationship or how to set up boundaries around a particular space. It's not advice giving, and it's most definitely not about us imposing beliefs on you. And that's really important. Sometimes people come to see me and they're scared that their way of seeing things will be different from mine, and I'm going to try to convince them. I'm going to try to convince them to give up a relationship. I'm going to try to convince them to do something else, but that's not my role. right? It's really about helping you come to terms with how you're living out your beliefs and your values. All right, so there are definitely resources on campus for that, for counseling. Here, the numbers are, you can take a screenshot. If you, on YouTube, you can always pause it when you're listening to it later, because the numbers are right there. We have a landline, 9701992, and the 856 number, 856-5758 is our WhatsApp appointments line. Because we have few counselors, you can expect to be seen on average about once a month. So I know that many of you may see on TV like once weekly sessions. That is ideal. And actually, for some people, it's not. For some people, once a week can be overwhelming. But unfortunately, we can't do that at the counseling service because of the student and staff to counselor ratio. We have a ratio of about 1 counselor to 4,000 or 5,000 people on campus. The ideal is 1 to 1,500 on a university campus. So we aren't able to do weekly sessions. However, students who have come to us, even with once monthly, have done pretty well. So that's really important. Somebody's saying, my goodness, that's why Dr. Debbie's saying advocate for more mental health services. We do have a psychiatric service, so we do have a psychiatrist. We have 1 psychiatrist, but that psychiatrist has dealt with many, if you want to call them episodes on campus, helping persons to really, I guess, get back to life after a psychotic episode and things like that. Those are things that we deal with regularly, and I'm telling you, people thrive and turn around sometimes and become mental health advocates themselves, which is beautiful to see. So it's the same number as our landline. And we also have a UE Helps number. So we have a part-time counselor who holds a phone line where you can WhatsApp in or call, and the number is there, 294-0042. It's confidential and anonymous, so you don't have to give your name if you don't want to. You just WhatsApp or call and say, you want to talk about this issue. You will be asked if you're a student or a staff. Somebody says, Dr. Debbie, do you sleep? I do sleep. I do. I have to, or else I'll be of no use to anybody. By the way, I don't think that the solution is always one-on-one counseling. People hear me say that many times. I'm a community psychologist at heart. Again, should I say this? I think that, to tell you the honest truth, I think that about at least half the issues I see in my practice at UE, maybe I wouldn't see if some systemic issues changed, right? So I know there are some systemic issues, not only at UE, but also in the country that's stressing people out and causing distress. So I'm a big advocate of working that way. And I also love groups. So, and I think music and dance and art, etc., are very healing. So again, it's if you want to come into counseling, but know that there are other resources out there. Or if you need to, again, if you need to, most definitely come in. Definitely do not suffer alone. And if we have to squeeze it in, we will squeeze it in somewhere, okay? So don't be, what should I say, disappointed or dissuaded by the numbers I just called out. Know, though, that there are other resources outside of counseling, the academic support unit in the Office of Student Services and Development. Some of our students have difficulty adjusting because it's a huge leap from high school to university, and maybe learning style and whatever they're struggling with. And so the academic support unit is there. Ms. Morgan is very supportive of students. And so increasing your skills that way, or academic skills, or bettering your study skills, can definitely help to alleviate anxiety and depression, for example. Probably help with some of the drinking too much or smoking too much because you want to numb your pain, the pain of going to classes and feeling overwhelmed and feeling like you're failing. Career and placement services, we know that unemployment and lack of adequate work, inability to pay fees is a contributor to depression, for example. Career and placement helps students. So that's a number 2 that I think you should look at, 9271650. And for our med-sci students, I don't know if you know, you do have personal and professional development officers. So go into your dean's office or call in these days, or ask your faculty who is the personal and professional development officer. I don't want to not call the name properly, but I do know the PPDO for med-sci. Then if you're like, boy, Dr. Let me tell you the truth, when I log off a class, I don't even want to go to it anymore. That is also a part of university life. Probably when you get into like final year, you're so sick of university, you don't even want to go and see anybody at university. That happens. That happened to me. I was dying to finish. So I'm going to begin wrapping up just by letting you know of these resources. So off campus, do know that you have the Ministry of Health and Wellness hotline. That's 888 New Life, right? I have had students who've called that hotline. So that's a hotline. Take a screenshot of this page. These things can be Googled. These names I'm going to read out. Choose Life International, you'll find them. Tea House Therapy, they're really doing a lot. They're very much on social media. This is Sonia Winter's place. I'm really liking a lot of what they're putting out on Instagram, for example. I think once a week they have a lot of tips. I think it's more than once a week. Like you'd say every Tuesday they have tips on this, every Wednesday they have tips on this. So follow them, Tea House Therapy. I find them very helpful. Google Kai Morgan and Associates, they do a lot of work. Right now, they're doing a lot of work for the LGBTQ plus community. I think they were training peer support counselors. I hope I'm not mistaken by saying that. I know that they had an online group. Similarly, JFlag also has resources and call lines. Again, just Google them, and Transwave, right? So if people are feeling like they want to go to a space, particularly for the queer community, for the LGBTQ plus community, know that you can do that. However, know that we at the counseling service, we consider ourselves a safe space, and we consider ourselves allies to the LGBTQ plus community. So you are safe there, whether you're exploring, whether you're not sure you're part of the queer community, or you definitely know that you are and want a safe space to talk, know that you can come to us. And then on IG, Instagram, we come talking about it like I'm all hip to social media. Not so hip, but I'm a little bit hip. So there is Think Mental Health Jamaica, which has a lot of groups, free groups. So check them out. Again, Tea House Therapy, My Mental Vitamins. There is a counselor that is doing a lot of social media work. I love Body Trust. Look it up. I absolutely love Body Trust. It's about learning to trust your body and be at peace with your body, not at war with it through dieting, shaming, self-hatred. They have a lot of really neat journal prompts. The Depression Project has a lot of cool things. So like put up on the stories about distraction or tips about depression. And of course, Art Therapy Jamaica. I think that's Leslie Bell Navis. I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name. Does a lot of really interesting work, and also Denise Robinson. So know that if you are at a place where if you like talking about your trauma is going to flood or overwhelm you, art, poetry, music, dance, expressing yourself that way can also be very, very healing, where you don't have to directly touch your trauma. You're going to it in a very indirect way. But that is also healing, because it helps us to process certain things, which is very important. All right, so I think that is it. I hope I didn't go too fast and throw too much at you, but I will hang out if you have questions for me later, but I hope you found it helpful.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Debbie. You mentioned so many important points from, not much being allocated in terms of budgetary, stipulations to, really develop the mental health community that resource to help persons. You also touched on a really important point that not many persons have access in terms of financial access to mental health services, and it's really a pity. I like the fact that you tied that into the fact that we as students, you charged us as students to advocate for changes in these areas, and I really appreciate that. I really hope our audience, they were listening and taking notes. Being inspired to really make changes. You touched on some tips that we can take to protect or improve our mental health. A lot of times, persons, they really focus on the external health, that's the physical health, but they oftentimes neglect their mental health. So I like the fact that you said, you spoke about a personal experience where you said you listened to the chronic song and you danced. I think that's something really, really important that we need to do. Just take a break, relax, give ourselves some space to breathe. And then finally, something that I heard you say, which honestly was so profound, that we should open ourselves up to love. That's something that honestly, when I heard it, it blew my mind, because I was like not expecting that. So I really like the fact that you mentioned that. And as human beings, I think that's something that's very, very important, because after all, we are social creatures. So thank you so much, Dr. Debbie. If anyone has any questions, you can ask, you can direct them to Dr. Debbie now. You can drop them in the chat, or you can go ahead and open your mic.
Okay, I have a question. This one. In comparison to the turnout before the pandemic, would you say that you're getting an increase in calls for assistance from students now? Well, let me not assume, but I want to know if my theory is correct. So
I think so. It feels that way. However, we're always busy at the university. So I'll have to look at the numbers to say, okay, yes, I looked at the numbers and there was definitely an increase. But it feels a little different. I think I'm seeing more, since you're asking, I'm seeing more people express suicidal thoughts, even if they don't have intent to act on it. So having suicidal thoughts doesn't mean you have intent, but I'm seeing more of that. And anxiety is always our biggest issue, but there are increases in anxiety, as I find that people are without their usual coping mechanisms. So going out, hanging out at a party, so on. Old traumas are coming to the surface that they used to use parties and so on, or just general socializing to keep out of their awareness. So yeah, I'm seeing that. I know in my private practice, I didn't have really a private practice that much, did I? Before the pandemic, and then I just got so many people saying, why don't you, that I was like, all right, fine. And I am kind of alarmed at how often my phone rings and it's people looking for counseling. Yes.
All right, thank you for that response. If there are any more questions, are there any more questions that you guys have? I wanted to ask one. You really emphasize on the fact that students really need to advocate, and there are so many, organizations and associations on campus. I know for us as PSA, there's Psychology Students Association. It's something that we try to do. We try to, bring awareness to that space. But in your professional opinion, what is one thing, if you could say one thing, what would that one thing be that you would say that we as students could do to really advocate for increasing more mental health services on campus, especially?
Sure. So one thing I can think of is that these different student bodies that focus on wellness come together and maybe start writing letters to administration that you need more counselors. Just say right to the campus registrar. I think I've seen university students at times, I know it's really hard, but advocate for, let's say, a waive of exam fees or something like that when exams are coming around. So go to your guild, say, put it on the agenda. We need more services. And the admin is aware too. I know that they have, I would not want to be in administration at you. It's a rough job. So I'll just put that out there. It's a hard job. And I think when you struggle, often, unfortunately, sometimes the place that you say, well, we don't have money for that would be mental health because it feels more of a luxury. But I think if you advocate and you let your needs be known, they'll listen that way.
Thank you. So I really hope that you guys were listening to that. Put it on your agenda, guys. We need to come together as, you know, students and student bodies to really lobby and, you know, really fight because I know that you students are really passionate. So if we really come together and really advocate for change, I think we will see the change that we desire. I see one question I see a hand raised. You can go ahead if you have a question.
I think this is the point where I would make it known that actually the UE Health and Wellness Program is actually targeting mental health for the academic year. So most of the programs that they would be launching would actually be tailored towards mental health and mental wellness, where they're trying to have series each month with mental health and different topical themes. You know, mental health affects students differently during exam time, like Dr. Chambers said, and it affects sport athletes differently. So I'm showing the semester one activities because we will be actually having a launch on October 19. And I think what Dr. Debbie Chambers said was very important because I don't think the program considered advocacy, and it shows area for collaboration and partnerships, especially with student groups, to make issues more clear. So look out for that in your social media space, look out for that in your email space. And like we said at the beginning, you know, the mental health space is kind of becoming a bit saturated, and you want that. You want persons to be more aware and you want to break the stigma. So I'm liking that after a while, you students are like, but we went to one last week. Because 2 years, 3 years ago, it wasn't necessarily like that. It was a little bit of a taboo topic. So
right.
That's my segue.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. And if I add a quick thing, I know you have a speaker waiting. If you find that students are like, oh, I don't want to see the word mental health anymore, like I really just don't, you can do activities to help students' mental health that don't have to use the word mental health. So we know from studies that social support is very important to mental health. So even organizing regular games night, as I said, you have your Chronics and Protege and Lila Ike music. You obviously know what music I like. Night where you just come in, you have a poetry slam, maybe you're having Afro-Caribbean dance or a workout night, and people will be working on their mental health without necessarily bringing up or speaking their traumas. So know that you don't have to only have sessions that have like focusing on anxiety, depression, but you have social sessions which bring together and build community. Those are very important.
Thank you, Dr. Libby. I'm so glad you said that because I think just hearing that word, the connotation that, you know, it has, you know, it gets people into this reaction or allows people to have this reaction like, oh boy, not another one. So I'm really glad you said that. And I think rebranding, you know, just rebranding the whole idea of mental health is important. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Libby. All right, so now we have our other speaker tonight. Miss Miss Jermaine Peart. She is actually the public relations manager for the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network Group. Wow, that's a mouthful. So, she's very important. When you hear that long name, she's very important. So, Miss Peart, the floor is yours.
I can, yeah. Must do it in the air as far as I can.
Good evening, everyone. Are you hearing me? If you're hearing me, you can just send a thumbs up or just type it in the chat and let me know. I see Najani is saying true or yes, a true. But Joan, yes. So as your wonderful host had mentioned, my name is Jermaine Peart. I think I need to give a story about that, but I will share later. I am in charge of public relations for the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network, one of the platforms that you will see on social media from time to time where we do our activities. And what my team rather is tasked with is educating and assisting persons with the concerns, I'm not calling issues, concerns that they may have from time to time. And might I just add though that Dr. Chambers, if I was still a student at UA, but I find you because your energy just, I feel like I could just, whatever it is that I'm experiencing, if I come to you, I'll be clear, I'll be great again, I'll be good, like I take on the school year. So thank you for sharing. And also thank you for the information as well. As a advocate for Jamhan, what we focus on, as I mentioned, on is advocacy, and what I'll delve into is rather just some of the illnesses that we do tend to, or most of our persons or most Jamaicans do experience, and then we can have a discussion on that. If you have any questions, you can let me know, and then we can just share from there. All right. So let me begin from the beginning. So as Dr. Chambers had mentioned before, mental health illness is a condition that causes mild or severe disturbances related to the individual, and it does disrupt your ordinary demands and routines. So yes, the pandemic, we all know about the pandemic and what it has done to us, not even for us, to us. But let us not forget as well that there are some persons, for example, Dr. Chambers, who, as she mentioned, the clientele wasn't that much before the pandemic, but now, more persons are in a space where they're learning that, listen, I really need to talk to someone, I really need assistance to manage my mental health. So let me call Dr. Chambers, whether through referrals or just finding her on social media. So we do appreciate you, Dr. Chambers. Thank you for all that you've done and continue to do. As it relates to mental illness as well, the one thing that we do or also encourage for those persons who we do interact with is that it is best to monitor the situation. So as a former psychology student, one thing that my lecturer had mentioned is, from time to time when observing yourself or going through your book, you recognize that there are some illnesses that the symptoms, like when you're watching those videos on TV, they're like, oh, you're suffering from this or this or this. And you're like, I wonder if that's the case. Or we go online ourselves and even we do some checks and then recognize that maybe that's it, or we self-diagnose. We should be mindful of that. So the recommendation that for these disturbances to be diagnosed or for you to seek assistance, it is best for you to wait out that 2 weeks. So these disturbances can be sudden or have a gradual onset and last for 2 weeks. And your mental health problems may be related to excessive stress due to a particular situation or a series of events. So for example, yes, thank you, Najani, don't self-diagnose. So for example, let's look at this afternoon when I know some of you may have heard, or many of you might have heard by now that, you know, the infamous Dog Paw has died. He was shot today and killed. And naturally, we know in the Jamaican sense, or I guess in the world as well, that once someone like that dies, that there is usually a reprisal. So I pray to God, I hope that you guys are okay, you're safe, that if you ever need to go in that direction, I don't know for how long, that you know, you don't encounter any issues. And one can imagine that if you are living in that area or know someone in that area, it can cause some level of stress, you know, have you thinking or wondering, you know, what's gonna happen? Is everything all right? You're all right, you're good, you want to come stay with me, couple, you don't know. So let's hope that as the days progress, that things can continue to be good down that side. All right, so moving on. Now we talk about what is mental illness, and we had mentioned that before. Well, let me just run through a bit. It is something that can affect everyone at any time. So it's a Jamaican thing where we say, "Cha, that could never happen to me," or if you are deep in faith, one may say, you know, it's not possible. I know we had mentioned before, if you're a psychology student as well, you may think or maybe feel guilty that you are not at your best. You're not performing at your best. I need to be my best. How could I be a psychology student? It's okay. And that's why we have our support group, It's Okay Mental Health, JA. And as Dr. Chambers had mentioned, apart from trying to seek assistance by yourself, we do encourage, I'm also a fan of group assistance, because sometimes you may find the interactions different. You may find answers that you need coming from those interactions. But what I do recommend as well is, while you are seeking that assistance, be mindful of who you get that assistance from. So your doctors on campus, the health centers that do provide that assistance, because as we mentioned, sometimes if you're not trained in the field, you don't have the certification or the license rather, you may have problems. And then what may happen is that you're misguiding people and then thinking something else that they shouldn't, and that may cause problems. So we have to be mindful of that as well. So I do recommend, and thank you, Dr. Chambers, for mentioning that UWI does have an excellent program. You can get assistance as well. As someone who is working and no longer a student, use it up while you're there. All right. And then another thing to be mindful of is, in the Jamaican context, it has been estimated rather that about 15.5% of adolescents in Jamaica fit the criteria for a diagnosis in depression. And we can imagine that since the pandemic, things have increased. We can see even in the news, some of the stories, we find that even our friends around us or partners, things have changed, how they process things. And what I've learned and noticed, or what we've assessed and recognized as well, is many of us are not, or don't have a space in which we can process our feelings, or we've never had a chance to really express ourselves, or let me see if I can choose my words wisely. We've never, or not never, the space wasn't really there in which we learned to talk with each other and not talk at each other. So when you're frustrated, we just get vexed and say whatever come out, and then we justify the behavior by saying, boy, I'm a Steno, or we use the astrological signs, and it's because I'm a Virgo, it's because I'm not throwing any shade, guys. It's because I'm an Aries, or because I'm a Capricorn, why? So just sit with me. And as such, the behavior just continues because, oh, it's because of this person or what. But we're not being mindful and working with each other to ensure that we can assist and and be mindful or step back when needs be. For example, going back to the same dog paw situation, I had a sister or have a sister who she says she doesn't watch news. The only time she watches the news is when she's in a room with someone who and the TV's on. And while talking to her about it, I say, you know what? Yes, I'd like to talk about it because I work in media and it is a very interesting story. So I want to talk about it, but I have to stop. Why? Because then being mindful that, hey, if she start with the story and then she get all worked up because she's a, let me say, an empath. So she's now thinking about what could happen or it's not helping her. So I may be happy now thinking that, oh, this happening, blah, blah, blah. See, such and such baby father, da, 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 da. I may feel good, but then what about my friend when I hang up and I'm doing my thing? She's now getting worked up over all these things and the hearsay and what's happening on the news. She's not okay. So at times, based on what is happening or based on, especially with the pandemic, it's a good time for us to be mindful. And if we know that we're going through it, we could do our best to seek help when necessary. If you're hearing a dog in my background, I do apologize. I make it even worse, and I'm my dog, but I do apologize. So moving on. So one of the illnesses that you hear most people talking about, but again, based on diagnosis, you know if you really have it or not. Depression, which is considered a psychological condition, it changes from time to time and it does affect our sense of physical well-being. Many of the symptoms rather can be misdiagnosed as physical problems. What can assist or what can help us in this time if it is that we're feeling depressed, or some of the symptoms rather that we do feel or experience while going through a rough time? It can be a constant feeling of sadness and hopelessness. And that could happen in the case of a student who is going through exams, had a rough time. So let's say, for example, if I was still a student and when my grandparents had died within the space of 3 months. So in August, my grandma died, and then November, my grandfather died. And I can only imagine, I don't know, I can't begin to think what would have happened if I was still in school or getting ready to go back to school and had that news, if I could function. And at the time, especially my final year, I was not only going to school, but I was also working. So that was one experience that I do not wish to relive. And if it is that you have lost loved ones or friends or people that you know at this time, my condolences to you and your family, and I do hope that you find peace and comfort as well. Another form or another symptom could be change in sleeping and eating patterns, irritability, withdrawal, and a decreased desire rather to participate in pleasurable activities. Now, what we do recommend as strategies to manage your depression are to consider lifestyle changes. So what is it that you're currently doing that you know that maybe if you need an adjustment, you could assist with? Meditation. I know many persons are talking about this app called Calm that once you're listening to it, you know, it helps with your sleep patterns and other things that you could take into consideration. Another aspect could be that of counseling, and which also encompasses psychotherapy, solving therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy as well. So I have a big video that I'm going to play, and then we continue.
My mother tells me that when I was a teenager, she noticed a dip in my mood every year around the time of exams in school. In my second year of university, I experienced a number of challenging events that led to my very first panic attack. And in my fourth year, I went through the darkest period of my life where I isolated myself from my family and my friends, and I struggled to complete my degree. And I was diagnosed as clinically depressed with anxiety and given prescription medication.
While you need a doctor or a psychiatrist, diagnose a mental disorder. There are signs and symptoms that as individuals you can look for. You can refer them to the community mental health team for assistance. If you or someone you love is suffering from a mental illness, it's okay to ask for help. And always remember, mental health matters.
My mother tells me that.
All right, so based on that video that we had there, where we learned that mental health, our mental health does matter, and also the process in which, thankfully, she was in a case where she had a mother who could notice that, hey, baby girl, there's something going on, and I think we need to, do something. Well, let's work together to get this sorted out. So going back again to what Dr. Chambers had mentioned, if don't feel that, going back to the Jamaican context, that, if it is that something happened to me, walk it off, or, I just need to drink, or I just need to have a smoke. We could try something different to assist us, or to ensure that we can go back to better days. And I see Courtney mentioned that, so we're seeing an ad like that in Jamaica. And I know Dr. Chambers had mentioned as well that, that of advocacy, we're working together to give you all the information that you need to know that, your mental health does matter. And it can be tough at times, but we're trying to find various ways now with the fast-paced world of social media. We're thinking of ways in which we could continue to connect with you. I'm looking forward to the information from the group as it relates to your mental health from an academic perspective. Big up on yourself. Big up on yourself. So as it relates to the solution-focused techniques, though, we have, again, the entertainment and recreation, writing in a journal. If it is that you're not a writer, consider other things like the physical activity. I know one thing that, another recommendation is that of a distraction box. So the distraction box comes in when you find that you're overwhelmed, your thoughts, and you're just having an off day. The distraction box comes in now when it gives you a chance to put things in there that could help you when you're going through that state. So you take a break. Then in that box, for example, let's say that you are a music fan, find your music that you want to listen to, or if you have a playlist on your phone, do that. If you are into streaming or shows, so you're a Netflix buff, or if you like Disney, we don't judge. Disney are your thing, go and go find a Disney show where you want to watch. What I'd also recommend too, if you're into streaming, avoid those shows that filled with violence and things. Or personally, I think avoid certain things, and it goes back to changing your lifestyle as well, to ensure that we're trying to move away from certain things, not pile them on anymore. And this also touches on stress management as well. I remember in one of the sessions or support groups, one person had mentioned that taking breaks does matter. Taking breaks is not limited to talking. Taking breaks could also mean that you have the social media breaks. Being in a space where, information is constant, information is always there. As soon as you take up your phone and you post is there, you have over, I think we're close to even more than 1 billion things being posted on a daily basis, and it's coming from different accounts, and some people post more than some, and it's there. It is okay if you want to take a break, and notice that even with our smartphones, it offers a blue light feature that gives you the opportunity to sleep, because they found that some people are having issues sleeping because what are the lighting, you can't sleep because have also the fear of missing out. So you don't want to put on your phone, for example, and here say maybe there was a tsunami close by, or put on your phone. Or I don't remember if anyone remembered a couple years ago when there was a tsunami alert somewhere up the coast, the south coast of Jamaica, and everybody was like, imagine if we did not sleep. So things like that could affect or add to the fear of missing out. Let's say we are, I don't know which, well, I haven't been watching any of the new shows, so let me go back to the Game of Thrones days. You know, you're on thing and you're hoping to see when the new release is gonna come up. You don't want to put on the phone because you're afraid that maybe, just maybe, you miss something. Yeah, stuff like that. We want to ensure that it's okay. If you're going to miss the date, you can always do a recording. Thank you, Johnny. Do a recording and ensure that you can always watch, and also know that it's okay if you miss stuff. Life it continues to go on and you'll be fine. And if you miss it, maybe if you save yourself to like season 8, they disappoint us. Yeah, it all works out in the end. So let us continue to anxiety disorders. So anxiety disorders differ from normal feelings or nervousness or anxiousness and involve excessive fear, anxiety, and anxiety oftentimes doesn't come without a trigger. So what you may experience are uncontrollable obsessive thoughts, recurring nightmares, and even overwhelming feelings of panic and fear. And that is with anxiety. Now with suicide, and we've been seeing more cases during this time. I remember Dr. Chambers had mentioned that as well. It's quite unfortunate, but there are different reasons as to why these things happen, and I do hope that whatever happens, that these people choose my words, have full peace. So it is estimated that 25% of our suicides occur among persons between 15 and 24 years. About 27.4% admitted to threatening suicide, and 25% reported that they think about suicide often and or very often. And when it was Suicide Prevention Month, which was in September, I remember we had shared a post that says, if you do encounter someone who wishes to, one of the first things that you should do is, listen. We find that sometimes persons are in a hurry and say, what, sorry, fine, listen, just talk and do your very best to seek assistance, but also try not to blame yourself and because, oh my gosh, what is it? Maybe if, it's understanding these things will happen, and sometimes even as parents, people might think that, maybe if this had happened or if I was there, or this would happen, but sometimes some things are out of our control. The best thing that we can do is to try and see how best we can assist and what we can do and find the necessary help. And as I mentioned, Dr. Chambers had mentioned before, there are many outlets out there that now here in Jamaica that allow for you to seek that assistance. And when we talk about suicide, one of the myths that we have is of people who talk about suicide won't really do it. And that is something that we ask that you be mindful of as well. Even if it is just a talk or just a thought, rather, it is best, just have that conversation with the person. But don't run in and talk about, what you talk about, you kill yourself at? No. I would recommend, just find a time, a space, and try to see if you could ease in that, going to that part, that section that allows you to get some answers, and then based on that, how best to assist the person. Because what we don't want is to be in a space where you're saying, oh, sure, nothing, and then maybe it was actually that. So as it relates to this myth, you say that almost everyone who commits or attempts suicide has given some clue or warning. Do not ignore suicide threats. And sometimes you'll be sorry when I'm dead, or I can't see any way out. No matter how casually or jokingly said, may indicate some serious suicidal feelings. And as it relates to the person, if the person is determined to kill his or herself, nothing is going to stop him or her. Even the most severely depressed person has mixed feelings about death, and most waver until the very last moment between wanting to live and wanting to die. So let us see what we can do or how best we can fix this. All right, so as it relates to self-care, some of the solutions that we have here is to exercise and to consider physical activity. So I know with the pandemic and thing, you know, you're at home or you might not go out often, you say, no, we're not doing that. But even just to walk to your neighbor, not the one next to you, but even like on the next block or so, or even just to, I don't know how some of the communities are. If the supermarket is closed, you can walk, you know, you can walk once it's safe. Make it a group thing. If you know that after the third time, you know, you get tired and can't bother, call up some friends and assign the person who you know that will say, hey, let's get to it. And if them rough with you, you know, them rough with you out of love. That can allow for you to ensure that you can be constant with your exercise and continue to be fit, especially with this virus that you know is respiratory. So you have to be mindful of your breathing and ensuring that you're at optimum health so that you can continue to be safe. Another thing is to learn mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation is a form of meditation that allows for you to be aware of your surroundings and be aware of yourself. So for example, if you have time on your hands, or just even after this session, you can just sit while in a space, your feet touching the ground, and also your hands, you can put them on your lap, and just close your eyes and just think about different aspects of your body, going down from the crown of your head to the sole of your feet. You're closing your eyes and you're breathing in and out regularly, and then thinking about your head. How does your head feel? Going down to your shoulders, down to your legs, and down to your toes, and then gives you an opportunity to have a personal check-in with your body to know, recognize if everything is okay. And another way in which you could have or connecting or improving on your self-care plan is to reconnect with your spiritual source. Personally, I am a praying woman, so every chance I get, once I remember to, because sometimes I get tired, can't bother. I do pray, I do have my songs that I listen to, and I do recommend this for everyone as well. Connect with your spiritual source. Wherever your spiritual source is, connect. Take a break and just focus on that, connect and figure out, you know, what's going on with me, what it is I can work on, do I need a break? And sometimes in those interactions, you find yourself or receive answers that it is that you've been wanting or you need. So reconnect to your spiritual source, think of a physical activity, and practice mindful meditation.
It's okay to struggle with mental health problems. It's not unique to you alone, you know. Everybody experiences struggles. Work stress, marital stress. I struggled with depression and anxiety. Our mind is the gateway to both our spirit and our body. And persons should be taking care of their mental state in the same way that you take care of your physical state. I also sought professional counseling, and one of the things that I learned from my counselors is that it's most important for you to take care of yourself first. Eating right, exercise, yoga, meditation. It's the rest every day. Getting some fresh air. Even if it's just a simple drive out, a simple walk out. If you're struggling with depression, you should reach out and seek a professional to help you go through these problems. You don't have to struggle alone. It's important to take care of your mental health every day. Every day. Every day. Mental health matters.
All right, so we do have another reminder that your mental health does matter. Regardless of what's going on in your life. And with that video, I'd say that I'd be wrapping up now because I've been over my time. I do apologize, Najani. Time management is key. So based on what we have discussed before, or the conversation when we started off with some good old chronics, thinking about mental health, piggybacking on what Dr. Chambers had mentioned about mental health and the different resources that are available. Most importantly, knowing that it is okay to speak to a mental health professional. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody make you feel worse about that. But also understanding that mental health can happen to anyone at any time, and also recognizing that the rate at which depression and suicide does occur here in Jamaica, it is something that through advocacy and also assistance from our healthcare professionals, we can continue to learn of new ways in which we could assist ourselves and assist persons around us, whether it be friends, family, or even strangers. Another thing that I'd like to mention is that we are currently in the state of revamping. So if you find that apart from the other groups that Dr. Chambers had mentioned, you would like to, grow more in that advocacy, you can join us through Jamhan. And I will leave a number in the chat and also contact details so that you could get in touch. Once it is that we do have things finalized, you will see content coming from us, and you can also be a part of our training sessions that we do offer, or support group and other activities that we have that geared at assisting persons who are interested in advocacy. So with all that being said, does anyone have any questions, any concerns that you'd like me to brush up on? And if not, thank you for having me and thank you for the opportunity to share.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Spirit. You mentioned before, I asked questions, if anyone has questions. You mentioned so many things. I felt like I just had a quick run through of my entire abnormal psychology course just now. Like you gave us so many things to think about. From the very beginning that you mentioned in that, mental health or mental illnesses or disorders, they really do affect everyone and anyone. It's non-discriminatory. So I'm really appreciative of the fact that you mentioned that. And in our cultural context, I really love the fact that you mentioned that as well, that as Jamaicans, we don't really give it as much the attention that it needs. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that as well. There are two other things that you mentioned that I'm really hoping that others were paying attention to, that when we're stressed, we tend to, well, some of us, let me speak in terms of my own experience. Sometimes when I'm stressed, I think that, oh, well, I don't know what the problem that, I can do this on my own. But in truth and in fact, we really need to speak, because if we don't talk to people, don't reach out for help, then how can people know what we're going through? So I really hope that persons were taking note of that you mentioned, that we should reach out and talk to someone that we trust. Another thing that you mentioned when you were talking about suicide was that how important it is to refer people to like professionals to seek help, because a lot of times persons are having suicidal thoughts and we ourselves may not be trained in a capacity to adequately deal with that. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, referral and referring people to professionals is something that we should definitely look into. So your presentation was really compact, and I really appreciate the fact that you touched on so many key points. It was so good. So I'll just ask now if anyone in the audience has any question that they would like to ask. I know you guys have questions. You're just itching to ask them. So just fire away, guys. So in the meantime, let me just give them a moment to compose their questions, because I know they have questions. So I know that you're the public relations manager for Jamhan. So what are some of the things that you guys have been doing, to really, I know, we got a lot of information from the videos and your presentation, but I want to, hear from you. What are some of the things that you have been doing, especially in the pandemic, to help with the fight against the stigma, especially against mental illness and, advocating for change in that regard? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Oh boy. Well, anyway, sorry about that, guys. We were active earlier this year. We're active and from a communication standpoint, and touching again on Dr. Chambers, I hope you don't mind me calling on you often, but you mentioned a lot of things I could agree with you with. From a communication standpoint, as the persons that interact with people who need assistance, it can be, let me not say a burden, but there are moments when we ourselves are reminded that we need a break, because here we are giving assistance, but it's a lot. And it taught us that we ourselves need to manage our time. Again, thinking not because you're in psychology that you're ironclad and you're good, but you yourself need a break. But it also opened our mind to, or opened our eyes to understand what was happening with people. Thinking of, of a daddy-daughter experience where we could think of, or we could see where Jamaican men aren't expected to express themselves. And I love to see the conversations next month, hopefully, when it's International Men's Day. Hopefully we can get some good conversations. Ideas, guys, Twitter Spaces is here. Please use up on the spaces, please. Let's get the conversations going. But in that time, we had the opportunity to do many IG lives. Most of our activity was on Instagram, and we had the chance to connect not just with mental health, but mental health in the society. So in January is usually the time where we talk about money and financial management. So we did an IG live session with a financial advisor from Sagipur. His name is Shamar Clark. And we spoke about financial management and how it affects your mental health. You know, you want to be successful, and we're seeing all the influencers and everybody talking about getting your money. And the Forex conversations come up and thing, and you want to know how you're not getting the money to, and you say, Jack, no, work list. That get yes. Well, so we talked about it and thought about the pillars that could assist us to know that we stay focused and do what we have to do and not be bombarded by what we're seeing happening in the world. The second conversation that we had spoke about music, reggae music, and the ramifications or the effects that came from the music itself and how that assisted us. In that time, we had also a support group in which persons would receive an email once they indicated through social media that they're interested. We do set up that group in which, you know, you have a facilitator, we have our psychologists and psychiatrists on staff who would assist, be trained, and whatever questions you have, they do their best to facilitate and ensure that, you know, we work with you to get to the stage that you need it to be. So most of our activities came from that, and we did offer advice during that time for any companies, schools, groups that needed that assistance. We did that as well. So most of our work was in social media, through Instagram, offering training sessions and advice through like discussions now, and also our support group. So we were looking forward to the next year, what it is that we could do and move forward with. And we're hoping to see more coming from our student arm and also the other groups. I see the work happening, and I'm happy that we are in 2021, we can say we're doing a lot. And we know we have more coming.
Right. Thank you so much. That was, you guys have been really busy. I'm really happy. And I think one of the themes that we're seeing emerging tonight just from the discussions is that the mental health space, or the community of advocating for mental wellness, it's really growing. And that's really something that I'm really pleased to see, especially in a Jamaican context where there's this obstacle of the stigma, you know, against mental illness. So that's something that a lot of, you know, many organizations have been advocating for. So I'm really happy that the space is becoming more and more saturated with that kind of thing. With your organization, Jamhan, and the multitude of organizations advocating for mental wellness. I'm really appreciative of organizations like those, because they're really making a difference. And yeah, it's really a happy moment in a psychology student's life when they see that changes are being made and advocacy is being taken place. So I'm really happy to hear that. So I'll just give the members of the audience to ask any questions, guys. Now is your chance. Now you guys are itching to go, so let's ask the questions and let's have Miss Peart respond to them. I guess you're a bit shy tonight. I'm not sure why. Or probably they haven't had dinners yet, so they're kind of, drowsy or tired. I don't know. Well, it seems as if no one has any questions. So thank you so much, Miss Spirit, for coming and sharing and just giving us so many nuggets, to really think on and to really, ruminate on. It was really an informative presentation. Thank you so much as well, Dr. Debbie, for sharing such insightful information with us and giving us also so much to think about. We really appreciate it. And we know that, in this space, both presenters tonight, they've really, inspired us to advocate for change. If you guys take nothing else from the presentation, one of the things I personally would want you guys to take away is that we definitely, as students and, in student bodies and student leaders, we definitely need to advocate for change. We need to advocate for, more access to mental health services and more things to be done, to dismantle that stigma that, surrounds mental illness. So I'm really appreciative of the nuggets that they gave us to think on. I know it's getting late, so I really don't want to hold you guys too any longer, but I know that this week and next week is, those 2 weeks are mid-semesters. So I just want to wish everyone all the best on your exams. I hope you guys are studying. I hope you guys are practicing. I hope you guys aren't cramming because we just spoke about mental health. We don't want anybody mash up themselves studying. So guys, pace yourself, give yourself, your distraction box. Yes, remember that. So yeah, just protect your mental health, guys. If you have to go walking or jogging in the mornings, do whatever it is necessary, as long as it's healthy, do prepare, do take measures to protect your mental health, guys. So without further ado, I just want to thank also the UEMONA students, the UEMONA commuting students office for holding this space for us to talk and interact with advocates and professionals. It was really insightful. So thank you guys so much for hosting us, well, creating this space for us to have this discussion. So that's really it, guys. Thanks to everyone who was here. Thanks for the support and all the best, guys, in your respective endeavors.
I also want to say thank you to our lovely host, Najani. I think you did a very great job. And thank you for all those who turned out. And as Najani said, all the best on your exams and have a good evening. Good night.